Life moves at a fast pace. Everybody has challenges. But God is on the move. From Pittsburgh to Nashville, join me on the journey on today's life, sharing stories of unshakable faith.
According to Cure Research for Children's Cancer, each year the parents of approximately 15,000 kids hear the words, "Your child has cancer." Her passion and calling has been to help bring new life into the world and care for women's medical needs. Because of her busy career, Nashville OBGYN physician Dr. Grayson Woods Brown and her husband Russ waited to have children of their own. And when the time was right, Grayson Jane was born. And then came their son Freddie, and life was good. But when Grayson Jane was 4 years old, Grayson and her husband heard those words that would shake their world. "Your daughter has acute lymphoblastic leukemia." Dedicating her life as a medical doctor to help others, Grayson now had to hand her daughter over to other physicians to save her. This is her story of unshakable faith. This is today's life. Grayson, tell me the day that you found out about your daughter, little Grayson Jane, and when she was diagnosed.
Well, I remember the day very well. It was a Tuesday in April, just over 1 year ago. And I remember it very well. One reason was because my dad had just been admitted to the hospital because of his dementia the night before. And we had all had kind of like a viral illness in the house, and I hadn't been feeling well, so I couldn't see him that night before. So that morning I got up and I was on my way to the hospital to help one of my patients with her surgery, and I got the call from our pediatrician. Literally, I know right where I was, about a half a mile from here, when he called and he said, "I have bad news, can you pull over?" And at that point, it was like, well, you might as well tell me. No, I can't really pull over. And he said, we think Grayson Jane may have leukemia from the blood work that we drew the day before. And so I need you to clear your schedule this afternoon. And she's going to go over to Vanderbilt for consultation with the specialist there. And so, my heart just dropped right there. It was one of those days you just can't anticipate, and really just shock and awe. It's very surreal then, and even now, it just really still feels surreal.
What did you do? Did you
well,
call Russ?
I could barely drive, but I did, and I had to, the OR was waiting for me, so it was one of those moments, like I couldn't,
so you were getting
unlike
ready?
A regular day, I was on my way to the OR. To help my patient with her surgery, and that couldn't wait. And so I had to drive on down to the hospital. I called Russ from the car and told him what was going on, and just in tears. And then I had to pull it together for 45 minutes to help my patient. And so it was really hard. It was really hard. I did not tell anyone at the hospital because I didn't know if I would make it. But through the what I needed to do to take care of my patient, so I didn't tell them that day. It was really hard. And thankfully, actually, one of my surgical colleagues was there, and he joined with me in the surgery, and that really helped get through that. And then we left from there, and I called. Gosh, I don't even remember which family members I called, but I came home and we told Grayson Jane, we needed to go to the hospital for more testing. And at that time, I was really, we were just in shock and in disbelief, because in that moment, she had been not feeling great for the past week, kind of a typical flu-like illness. And so in that moment, she wasn't feeling terrible. And so we have a picture of where we took her to Vanderbilt Children's that day, on that Tuesday afternoon, and she's wearing a Snow White costume. She dressed up. She was actually feeling pretty well, and we met with her, who's now her oncologist. He told us the news really after our pediatrician, Dr. Pistachia, who's wonderful. He said, I think she has leukemia from looking at the blood work, and we couldn't believe it. We just could not believe what we were hearing, and yet at the same time, we really had a supernatural peace just in the Lord that we didn't, while we were overwhelmed and devastated because we didn't know, and I'm, as an obstetrician, I don't know about leukemias. It's not my specialty. I was in mom mode. This sounds awful. Is this a death sentence? Is this, you just think the worst, and not even really knowing as a medical professional and as a mom, I didn't know.
Because you waited
I didn't know.
to have children.
I had waited and finished all my studies and in obstetrics and gynecology and not in blood disorders. But he, Dr. Pistachia, it was very sobering, and at the same time, he said even at that moment that he felt that from what they could tell originally that hopefully it was treatable.
Did they run more tests?
They did. So we were admitted to the hospital that day on that Tuesday. They kept us in the hospital, and it was very difficult because of having the needle sticks for her, the IVs. It was very, very hard. But so we stayed, and then that Friday they ran more testing and did a bone marrow test under anesthesia to affirm that that's what was going on.
How did you prepare?
Well, we couldn't. It was just, we were in crisis mode, really. And like I said, the Lord was with us because we couldn't function of our own. We were so upset and devastated in the hospital, and really not knowing, even when they affirmed that leukemia was the diagnosis, if what that meant. We really didn't know what the prognosis, what that would mean for her. So we didn't know how to describe it to her, except that, we're sick right now, but there are medicines, there are treatments, and that's the only way we knew to explain it.
Was she upset or?
Well, and what happened was when we were in the hospital, she went from wearing her snow white dress on that Tuesday to, by the Thursday, Friday, before they initiated the treatment, she couldn't move. She was running high fever. The leukemia was in full throttle, taking over her body, and she got to a place where she couldn't move, and she's very sick. And so we were just so thankful that the Lord provided a place like Vanderbilt Children's and the physicians with medical treatments to take care of her. And in that moment, we were just cried out. We were so thankful for chemo, for whatever treatment they had, because she was so sick.
My friend, what are you seeking? It's the first question Jesus asked two of his disciples in the book of John, and it's a question we all need to ask ourselves. Are you searching for truth in your life, but the world has pulled you away from God by enticing you to believe that others have the answers that will bring you happiness? Our Father, He's calling you to seek His face, His Word, the Bible, and His promises that will fulfill your life, His truth. I Seek Truth is an intimate journey of devotions that are heartfelt conversations with our Heavenly Father that will encourage you from Genesis to Revelations to dig deeper into the Word of God. For your best gift, we'll get this book right out to you. Just call the operator and say, I seek truth.
Did you know that you can take CTVN with you wherever you go? Just subscribe to Cornerstone Network on YouTube. That's all you have to do to enjoy hundreds of great videos from all your favorite Cornerstone shows, all on the go. Real-life interviews, the best of Origins, and music from the best Christian artists, all with one click. So make sure to subscribe and click the bell today, and get ready for a life-changing message for wherever life takes you.
Grayson, you had a lot going on. Your dad was in the hospital with dementia. Now little Grayson Jane is sick. You're working, you're taking care of patients. You're a wife. and a mom, how did you keep it all together? And tell me about those days after you found out.
Well, it was very hard. It was very hard for at least several weeks, just juggling everything between my dad and Grace and Jane and office and trying to take care of my patients who I love and care for. And it was a time where you just do what you got to do and really try to march and rest and that the Lord is sovereign and in charge, which is hard, but it was a very powerful time because that's all we could do. We could only trust in Him because there was too much happening.
Did you have a lot of friends and support?
Support from friends, family, church. Oh yes, we had a huge outpouring of support, and that really helped. Letters and cards, and folks visiting the hospital, visiting Grace and Jane in the hospital, visiting my dad in the hospital.
So take me through from that point to where she is now. You know, she had to get the port in, started chemo.
They started chemo immediately, and you just never think you see a day as a parent where you are happy to have chemo. Happy to have that kind of treatment. But literally within days, she turned around, was responding, was perking up, laughing at her brother in the hospital. So we went from that point, just about a year ago, proceeded with a year's worth of intensive chemotherapy, which meant we, as a family, or whichever of us could go with her, were there every week for either 3 to 6 hours at a time, every week. And we were admitted into the hospital 8 to 10 times. So very challenging year.
And she lost her hair.
Now she lost her hair. We got, how to really keep bald head.
Did it bother her?
No, it didn't bother her at all. So there's a lot of perspective to be gained because her bald head didn't bother her. She put on her headbands and dressed right up and just didn't think a thing of it. And now her hair's grown back in, and she's playing on the playground with her little brother Freddie. And at this point, and her prognosis is excellent, which we're so thankful for. That her, the cure rates are really high, over 85-90% with what she has, her particular leukemia. And so she will continue one more year, a little over 1 year of chemo, and we go once a month.
Oh, that's
compared to, and she can start school. And
I remember you telling me that her perspective and your perspective are two different things, and that when you heard the news or when she was going through treatment, she just thought differently. Can you share some of that?
Oh yes, I mean, and it was just so. It's all of it is so humbling as a mom, as a parent, as a physician, and to be there in the chemotherapy clinic all day, barely having times to say get a bathroom break, or we're taking the IV pole with us, and it was emotionally tiring, physically tiring, and yet she would have the perspective of, where are we going? Can we go get ice cream when we leave? Can we go to the park? Where are we headed next? And it was a real
what did she teach
ray
you?
of light, because it was like the Lord saying, hey, I'm okay. I'm okay here, and she's in the moment where, as a parent, we're worrying and we're tired, and, so it's a real perspective. She's, not going to dwell. She wasn't going to dwell on the negative, on the hard parts. She was looking forward to whatever good things were going to come.
How's your husband handled all this?
He has handled it very, very gracefully, and he's just the number one supporter. He's very patient, and it's been very trying, but he's doing well.
Let's talk a little bit about your faith. How has your faith grown through this whole process?
Well, I mean, it's grown tremendously, and if we didn't have our faith in the Lord to rely upon, I wouldn't be sitting here, I don't think, saying that, we're okay. And that in the midst of all the calamity, He did provide a peace that we could not that was without understanding, that we would not have had, we wouldn't have had. And we would be so much more, I can't even imagine. I really can't.
How?
Because He provided the strength and the peace during the time, when it was really awful and hard.
And what about, Grace and Jane? How's she handling it now?
Oh, well, it's hard to articulate. It's hard to articulate a blood disorder and a sickness, and especially when my father was sick, and he went on to be with the Lord roughly 2 weeks after Grace and Jane got out of the hospital. And so we had to come up with language about how he had a different kind of sickness, and he was older, and her, and she has a different situation. One story I can tell you is that when Grace and Jane came out of the hospital, and I told her we were going to visit my dad in hospice, she sat down right here and she said, "I'm going to take him something." And she sat down and she drew and cut, and I looked up and she had made a crown. And she'd never made a crown before. And said, "We're taking this to Granddaddy. It's his crown." And that was it just blew us away, because that was the Lord's saying, here's his heavenly crown. Grace and Jane, I'm living, breathing, I'm right here, I'm with her. It gave us that real peace that during this awfulness, he's going to take care of us, that he's taking care of my dad. He's going to and is taking care of Grace and Jane. He's taking care of us.
In the midst of all this, you lost your father, right? Mm-hmm. How long ago after you found out?
It was 1 month.
1 month after. Mm-hmm. So you had to deal with...
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It was just awful. And just, just the worst. There's no words. And yet, what I'm describing, and Dad had lived a wonderful life and had gotten to a place where it was his time. And the Lord let us know that it was his time, and that he was okay. He was okay. And that got us through. And just, knowing that.
He's the one who gave
the
you
difference
the strength
between just thinking and believing and really knowing. And the same with our daughter, that we knew that he loves her and is going to take care of her and take care of us. If we didn't have that, I don't know what we would do.
My friend, what are you seeking? It's the first question Jesus asked two of his disciples in the book of John, and it's a question we all need to ask ourselves. Are you searching for truth in your life, but the world has pulled you away from God by enticing you to believe that others have the answers that will bring you happiness? Our Father, He's calling you to seek His face, His Word, the Bible, and His promises that will fulfill your life, His truth. I Seek Truth is an intimate journey of devotions that are heartfelt conversations with our Heavenly Father that will encourage you from Genesis to Revelations to dig deeper into the Word of God. For your best gift, we'll get this book right out to you. Just call the operator and say, "I seek truth."
Friendship is what we're all about here at Cornerstone, and we want to find out who you are. Our new Friends Club is a place to get to know us better so we can learn about who's watching us. If you've never reached out to us before, we have a book gift to welcome you to Cornerstone. You'll also receive our monthly newsletter. Just call us and tell the prayer partner you'd like to join the new Friends Club. They'll also pray and intercede for you and your family. Call us at 888-665-4483. Connect with us today.
Grayson, you're an OBGYN. You have brought many, many children into the world, and you waited a while to have kids because you focused on your career. Tell me about your second child.
Well, our second child is Freddie, and he's 5. And he was born 12 months after Grace and Jane. We have a funny story about when he arrived. Interestingly enough, they had the same due date, which was July the 4th. And I get a lot of slack for as an obstetrician. But God has a fun sense of humor, and
So it was a surprise.
It was a surprise. It was a wonderful surprise, and but what he let us know was literally the day my sister was coming over. I had invited her over and said, come on over. We want to tell you something. And we put on a T-shirt on Grayson Jane, who was about 5 to 6 months at the time. That said, I'm a big sister, as a way to communicate our news. And the very same day, my sister had called me 2 or 3 times that day, which is unusual for her, saying, I need to tell you something. And I was working, and I said, well, okay, we come over later and you can tell me. And so as soon as she got here, I said, well, what's going on? Thinking she had a medical problem or something. And she said, I don't know how you're going to take this, but I keep having dreams. I know they're from the Lord, but that you're going to have another baby. And so I said, well, come in here. Come, let me show you something. And so we had a big time over that. And here, the very same day, the very same moment, we were telling her, yes, we know.
What did she
And not
do?
only that, he's coming. He's coming in a few months. She just couldn't believe it.
So how was it with 2 babies?
It was wild.
Now how about
just wild.
How about Grayson, Jane, and Freddie today?
So today they are best of friends, and they fight like normal siblings. And Freddie, when you talk about how do we make it through this past year, he's provided so much brevity. He's younger. He wants to play. He wants to get out the trucks and trains, and so that's provided a real source of love and comfort for us. And when Grayson Jane was in the hospital, to have him there watching movies and drawing was such a blessing.
Does he ever question what's going on?
He does. And at one point he said, a couple months in, it was hard on him because here's his best friend, his buddy. They've never known a life or a day without the other. And all of a sudden she's at the hospital. Mommy and Daddy aren't always here. And one day he said, when's the hospital going to close? Because he was so upset for her, and didn't want her to have to keep going there.
One of the questions I want to ask you is that, we serve a loving Father, and some might ask parents, how can a good father cause this? An innocent, beautiful little girl, and now she has cancer. How do you deal with that?
Well, we were grappled with that, like every normal parent, just the awfulness of it. How could anything like this happen to me, especially to a child or a baby? And it was hard. I mean, I definitely, you have times of questioning.
I hear a child. I hear a little one.
Oh, she's home, Grayson Jane. Grayson Jane, come here. Oh, and here's Ruby too.
Hi,
Come here.
This is Grayson.
This is Mrs. Squires. Can you say hi? You are. Hi. We're talking about you.
You look beautiful.
Can you say hi? We're talking a little bit about back when you visited the hospital.
And you're doing great.
Yeah,
now.
I know, and how we're doing great now, and we just go every once in a while, and the other kids that we saw there. And so that was another aspect that was humbling, in that there were other kids there, and many kids, and many of whom had more serious things happening. Yes, ma'am.
Where's Fred?
Where's Freddie? We were just talking about Freddie. Did you see him outside?
Where is he?
I don't know. He went with Daddy. Is he outside? You want to go look for him?
So what would you say to a parent who's struggling with going through the same situation?
Is you just keep your eye on your beloved right here, and knowing that he loves us. He does, and will see us through, even when it's not pretty.
What's that?
What's what?
I brought that for you. You want to go get it?
Present. Do you want to see?
Go get it.
Go get it. Go get it. You can go get it. I think Miss Terry brought it for you.
As a physician, was it hard for you to let go and let other doctors take care of her? Did you question, or
No,
did you
I
just
didn't.
sit back?
I did. That was part of the surrender. We were really forced very quickly into a place of surrender, but then it was okay. It was okay, because what could we do? What could we do? We had to trust, and I was fine with that. I mean, I was glad to feel that we were cared for, that these are the brightest folks in the country, and occasionally the medical side of me would peek through, just with some of the technical things, like with the IV and being in the hospital. And I think from that aspect helped, because I wasn't frightened by being in the hospital, the equipment, and so on. But okay, go right ahead. Okay, I'll meet you.
I'm going to come and see it in a minute, too. Grayson, I want to go back a moment and go back to the question. We serve a loving Father, but some parents might question, how can a loving Father cause a beautiful little girl to have cancer? How do
Well,
you...
sure. I think that has to run through every parent's mind when a tragedy strikes, and I think those are normal questions. How could this awful thing happen? How could you let this awful thing happen? And that's part of the process of grieving and being so upset. And yet, I remember one day in the oncology in the cancer clinic, seeing the other kids who were there being treated, many of whom had more severe illnesses, and some that appeared that they may not live long. And that really put some perspective into my questioning. But also, the Lord just gave me, again, it's just having that faith, having the surrender, and realizing He downloaded to me, there's sin in the world. It's a fallen world, and I'm not giving you the sickness. You're giving her cancer. That's part of the fallen world, and there's fallout, there's shrapnel, there's and I love you, and I'm going to care for you through this and through whatever comes.
So He gave you the peace.
He gave us the peace, and that we are living into eternity, and to be able to see past what's right here, even though it's really hard. It's hard when we're hurting and our child is hurting, but to know this isn't it.
This isn't the end.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to thank you so much for being here and sharing your story. You are reaching thousands of parents that are going through the same thing. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Is your child ill? Are you feeling hopeless? Friend, I want you to know that there is hope, and it starts with Jesus. In Isaiah 40:31, He tells us that those who hope in the Lord will find their strength renewed. Your strength will be renewed, so that you too sometime will be able to share your story of unshakable faith with others that will give Him glory. This is Today's Life. I'll see you next week.
Cornerstone Television wishes to thank all our faithful viewers whose consistent prayers and financial support have made this program possible.